Hey everyone, this is TH Stories 80, where we narrate fanfiction audiobooks from various fandoms. Now we begin chapter 23 of an extraordinary journey. Let's dive in. Ancient Outpost, Antarctica, Earth. And just like that, Willow found herself back inside the underground facility, staring at Colonel O'Neill, who seemed to be frozen in what looked like a block of ice. As she stepped forward toward the stasis pod and her teammates, a large buzzing filled her ears. A headache began to throb, forcing her to rub her temples as the buzzing grew sharper. Then came the voices, muffled at first, echoing inside her head. O'Neill, my brother, SG-1 and I will find a way to revive you. I swear it. Willow's eyes widened. She glanced at Teal'c. His mouth hadn't moved. Jack, I'm so sorry. Her head snapped toward Daniel. Again, no movement from his lips. How was this possible? She had understood being connected to Colonel O'Neill before, but now? Why was she hearing their thoughts? Colonel, Jack, I'm sorry. We should have done more. We'll find a way to get you out of this place. The buzzing intensified. Willow pressed her palms harder against her temples. Beneath the hum, more whispers surfaced. Not just Daniel, Teal'c, or Carter. She could hear the thoughts of the F-302 pilots still flying overhead. The crew aboard the Prometheus, their excitement bleeding into her head as they repeated the same thing. Anubis's fleet was destroyed. The voices multiplied, louder and louder, until it felt as though her mind was being overrun by thousands of clashing radio stations. Willow collapsed to her knees. She opened her mouth, thinking she screamed help, though she wasn't sure if any sound escaped over the storm in her head. Through watery vision, she saw Daniel, Carter, and Teal'c whirl around, panic etched on their faces as they rushed toward her. The pain was unbearable. Tears streaked down her cheeks as she writhed, clutching her head. Carter slid to her knees beside her. Daniel and Teal'c flanked her on either side. Willow tried to yell that she was hearing everyone, but the sound drowned beneath the flood of voices in her mind. She could only guess, from the fearful confusion on their faces, that they heard her words. The three of them were speaking, frantic, but she couldn't hear them. All she could hear were the endless whispers. Her throat raw, she begged them to get the Prometheus and the F-302 squadrons away. The thoughts from the ships were deafening, unbearable. Carter, visibly shaken, snapped into her radio, reporting the situation to General Hammond without mentioning Willow's condition outright. Daniel added that the facility's systems were still unknown and might endanger the Prometheus. Willow's silent scream nearly broke Carter's composure. She told Hammond it was urgent. They needed the Prometheus to move away until SG-1 could verify the area's safety. It took several long minutes. Willow pressed into the snow with her forehead before her screams faded into whimpers and finally dissolved. Willow, Carter asked gently, placing a steadying hand on her back. A low moan escaped the redhead. Please, stop thinking. The three exchanged a glance. Willow whispered hoarsely, I can hear all three of you in my head. Yes, Daniel, it hurts. Daniel blinked, stunned. I was thinking she was hurting. I don't know why this is happening, Tilt. Willow murmured as she sat back on the cold ground, rubbing her temples. And yes, Major, this is telepathy. She exhaled shakily. Having just you three here is better than the Prometheus crew screaming in my skull. Teal'c opened his mouth to speak, but Willow cut him off. I don't know how this is possible, Teal'c. She groaned. This is going to be so annoying. Sorry. He inclined his head in acknowledgement. Maybe don't yell your thoughts? She added warily. We'll figure something out, Carter whispered. She frowned. I can't even begin to understand how this could have happened. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck. Pretty sure we don't have a telepathy for dummies manual lying around. He gave a weak smile, then thought grimly that he had a point. SG-1 had no experience with anything like this. Willow flinched. Daniel, you're thinking too loud. At least the pressure in her head was easing. We need to find a solution. Carter said, settling cross-legged in the snow. Any ideas? Willow surprised them. Buffy went through something like this in high school. All three of them thought the same word. Good, only for Willow to wince. Not so loud, she muttered. She explained. Blood from a demon got on her arm, and she started hearing thoughts. It was magical. She couldn't stop hearing them. But someone fixed it, right? Daniel asked. Angel and Giles did. They made a potion with the heart of another demon. She had to drink it. Yeah, Carter shook her head. This isn't a demon thing, so no demon cure. Any magic you can try? Daniel pressed. Willow shook her head quickly. It wasn't only that she lacked spells for situations such as this, she was also afraid. The last time she used magic, during the search for Carter aboard the Prometheus, she had clinically died. She didn't want to risk that again. Teal'c stepped forward. The Jaffa have meditation techniques to resist mind control. Wait, Daniel frowned. The Goa'uld use telepathy? Not through telepathy, Daniel Jack said. Yet it is still considered mind control, Teal'c said calmly. The Nishta is one such weapon. Daniel grimaced. Right, bad memories. Willow squeezed her eyes shut. Daniel, stop thinking, she gasped. I can see what you're remembering. Please think of something else. Puppies, horses, anything but Hathor in a tub full of writhing Goa'uld snakes. Carter muttered, trying not to think is harder than it sounds. She sighed. Okay, meditation's a long-term solution, but for right now, maybe a distraction. Willow groaned. Distraction? Carter's eyes lit with realization. Before she could speak, Willow winced. White noise, she whispered. And yes, that was your thought, Major. Carter turned to Teal'c and Daniel. Can you keep your mind calm, Teal'c? I can, Major Carter. Carter quickly radioed Hammond, already running through her plan mentally. Willow caught her thoughts and nodded. Headset with white noise. That could work. A few minutes later, Carter and Daniel used the rings to beam back to the Prometheus, now orbiting Earth among the debris of Anubis's fleet. In the underground facility, Willow finally breathed. Teal'c's mind was far quieter than the dozens she just endured. Whispers still seeped through, but they were tolerable. Teal'c began teaching her the first steps of Jaffa meditation. 20 minutes later, Willow leaned sideways, reaching for a nearby flask of water. It flew into her hand. Her eyes widened. Teal'c's brow rose in surprise. That's new? Willow whispered, stunned. Willow's quarters. Stargate Command, 4 weeks since the Battle of Antarctica. Following their return nearly 2 hours later with a thick headset and a digital player, Carter and Daniel were just as unsettled after hearing Willow and Teal'c describe the redhead's seemingly telekinetic ability. To prove she could really do it, Willow lifted the flask of water again, but when she tried to set it down gently, the flask instead shot across the room, hit the far wall, and landed on the snow covered ground with a dull thud. Okay? Daniel said, his expression mixed. One thing at a time, Carter told everyone, keeping her voice steady. She handed Willow the headset already connected to the digital player by a thick wire. The player would emit white noise, hopefully enough to block out the constant flood of thoughts from the Prometheus crew and everyone else for that matter. We'll figure it out, Carter added gently. Then she looked over her shoulder. And we'll get Colonel O'Neill back. Willow nodded, but not before repeating O'Neill's last orders for Daniel to record The Simpsons and for them to thaw him out as soon as possible. Teal'c remarked, that sounds familiar to what O'Neill would say. Daniel agreed. So did Carter. With that, Willow put on the headset and activated the player. White noise filled her ears. She could still faintly hear Carter, Daniel, and Teal'c speaking through the buzzing, but she knew it was best to learn control quickly. She didn't want to be sidelined again. especially not after Anubis's attack. It took nearly 4 weeks of intense meditation and sheer willpower before Willow felt ready to leave her quarters at the SGC. She had been confined there since returning from Antarctica. Her growing list of abilities, first magic, then empathy, now telepathy and telekinesis, was being kept strictly confidential. Only General Hammond, SG-1, Dr. Weir, and the President knew what was happening. Others on the base wouldn't understand. The privacy concerns surrounding telepathy alone were enough to cause alarm. To address this, Hammond, Weir, and SG-1 had spoken with her over video link soon after her confinement. Together, they drafted a set of rules governing her telepathy. They needed boundaries, how far she could go, what she was forbidden to attempt. No one knew if she could project thoughts, control others, or do something even more dangerous. For now, she was not allowed near outsiders with the highest security clearances, the highest of the high, as Hammond put it. Willow suggested another safeguard, a failsafe, that could neutralize her powers if she ever lost control. Hammond, Carter, and Teal'c agreed, though Weir and Daniel voiced concerns that such a device could be abused to control her. Ultimately, they compromised. If a failsafe could be developed, only those present at that meeting would know of it, not even the president. The thought of the world's most powerful man holding a switch to control a telepath was too dangerous. Over the next 3 weeks, Willow endured constant white noise therapy and long meditation sessions. Gradually, she managed to turn down the volume of the voices in her head. By the fourth week, after combing through conspiracy sites for potential coping techniques, she finally found a way to focus inward on her own mind, her own thoughts. Now, Willow stood at the door of her quarters. She opened it and immediately felt the buzz of distant voices in her head. Closing her eyes, she centered herself, focusing on her own thoughts. She took a deep breath, stepped into the hallway, and shut the door behind her. The mummers faded until moments later there was silence. An airman passed by and nodded to her. She nodded back. She couldn't hear his thoughts. As she walked, Willow considered the origin of her telepathy. She had been physically connected to Colonel O'Neill when he downloaded the ancient knowledge into his mind. That must have opened a mental doorway linking them. With him now in stasis, his side of the door was closed, but hers remained wide open. At least that was her theory. At least it's closed now. I just hope I can control it soon, Willow thought. Breathing a quiet sigh of relief, Willow turned down the hallway toward the elevator lobby. She was needed in the briefing room. The rest of SG-1 had already debriefed Dr. Weir about what everyone was calling the Battle of Antarctica. Willow hadn't. Her issues made it impossible. Now, it was finally her turn. Briefing room. SGC an hour later. Willow didn't need telepathy to know everyone was surprised. She told Weir and her team everything she had seen while connected to O'Neill before the link was severed. And now she was telling them about some additional interesting information she managed to glean about an ancient starship known as Destiny. So, Daniel was the first to speak after Willow's revelation. Are we talking about a ship that still has living ancients on board? I don't know, Daniel. Willow replied. I remember bits of information, pictures, and, well, it felt like watching security footage from a thing. Floating orb thing? Carter asked, puzzled. Willow nodded. It's one of the things I drew when my mind was connected to Colonel O'Neill. She shook her head. Anyway, Destiny is supposed to follow the route taken by other ships. Other ships? Weir asked. What other ships? Ships that build stargates and place them on planets, Willow explained. Carter leaned forward. Willow continued. I don't know what they were called, but yeah, Destiny follows the route of these ships. By now, It could be in another galaxy. Daniel let out a low whistle. Millions of years ago. By now, it would be, assuming the ship has a hyperdrive, Carter cut in, which it most likely does, then it's far, far out in deep space. It is out of reach, Teal'c said. Could the vessel still be functional after all this time? Everyone shrugged, even Carter and Willow. And what about Atlantis? Daniel asked. Could it be somewhere on Earth? Maybe not Antarctica, but I had a name in my head, Willow said. Lantia. You mentioned Lantia on the Teltac, Daniel reminded her. And you also mentioned Aqua. Water. Weir nodded. So if Lantia is the planet's name, then we're looking for a world of water? Carter shook her head. Without a gate address, we can't even begin searching. She turned to Weir. Has the Antarctic Council given permission for us to examine the outpost? The computers there may hold clues to Lantia's location. Weir shook her head. The Council is still debating. The chair weapons platform, currently Earth's most powerful defense system, is located there. The signatories don't want other nations to have unfettered access to that technology. From what my sources say, they're just going around in circles. It will take time. She turned back to Willow. You also mentioned the Alterans and the Ori. They came here from another galaxy. The Alterans, I mean. Willow said, trying to recall the flood of images she'd seen through O'Neill. They were escaping something. I guess you could call them religious fanatics. Are these aura you spoke of? Daniel asked. Yeah, I think so, Willow replied. What happened then, Willow Rosenberg? Teal'c asked. They traveled for many years until they reached Avalon, where they built and placed many stargates, Willow said. Avalon, Weir asked. The Milky Way, Daniel breathed, amazement on his face. I think Avalon is the Milky Way and the Alterans are the ancients. Willow nodded. They came to Avalon and settled first on Daka. The name's on the tip of my tongue. Willow's eyes brightened. Dakara. It's called Dakara. At the name, Teal'c sat bolt upright, eyes wide. Teal'c? Carter asked, noticing his reaction. Are you alright? Willow Rosenberg, did you just name Dakara as one of the first ancient colonies? Teal'c asked sharply. Yeah, I think it was the first colony. Do you know the place? Willow asked. Yes, it is where the enslavement of the Jaffa began, Teal'c said grimly. The temple at Dakara is the site of the first implantation of Goa'uld symbiotes, where the Jaffa were given the strength. It is considered by many Jaffa to be the holiest of places, a world where none dare set foot. Willow nodded, then continued. After Dakara, the second planet to colonize was Earth. They made it their capital. Amazing, Daniel whispered. But now, Willow said suddenly, leaning back in her chair, I feel as if I've been misled since high school. You mean your story about fighting vampires, demons, and monsters? Weir asked gently. Seeing Willow's confusion, she added, Don't worry, the president himself briefed me on your past. Uh, the former vice president and the current one still don't know. But at the time, the president felt I needed to, since I'm taking command of the SGC. Oh, Willow squeaked. Willow, you were saying? Carter prompted. Well, Willow said slowly, every book I've read since meeting Buffy, everything I've been told, said demons and monsters have existed on Earth since the dawn of time. But if the ancients colonized this planet millions of years ago, did they encounter demons? Were there even demons back then? Were the ancients affected? And why were they never referenced in the texts I've read? She sighed. I don't know. Now I'm just confused. And it's not like I can call my sources to ask, since the Stargate program is classified. Well, Willow, Daniel said, thoughtful, there could be explanations, such as, Willow asked. The first is that maybe all of these so called demons never existed, Daniel suggested. And if they did, perhaps they're more like the Goa'uld. You mean aliens? Carter asked. Maybe, or at least beings who only claim to be older than they are, Daniel clarified. Just like the Goa'uld claim to be gods when they aren't, Willow said. Exactly, Daniel agreed with a smile. But it's just a theory. There's no way to know for sure. Carter suddenly snapped her fingers. The Hellmouth! You told us about it, Willow. Ma'am? When you first arrived, you explained your past and mentioned Sunnydale's Hellmouth. I suggested it could be a dimensional doorway between worlds, Carter said. What if it really is alien tech? Hmm, Daniel mused. What if the ancients created it as an experiment into alternate realities? Something predating the quantum mirror? Maybe they thought it failed and left it running. That could have allowed creatures from another reality to cross into ours. That's possible, Carter admitted, but without tests, we can't make any claims. After a few more minutes of discussion, Weir nodded. Thank you for your briefing, Lieutenant, and I'm glad to see you in control. Willow nodded. Weir dismissed the group, telling them they would be leaving on a mission in 2 days. She then retreated into her office and shut the door. As the others lingered, Willow turned when she heard her name whispered, first in her mind, then aloud. Willow Rosenberg, Teal'c said. Would you care to test your new abilities in sparring practice for a few hours? Now? Willow asked. Yes, Teal'c replied calmly. It would be best to gain experience in combat situations as soon as possible. Well, there's that. Willow nodded. Yeah, sure, why not? Very well, Teal'c said, rising to his feet. I will see you in the gym in 30 minutes. Okay. Willow turned to Daniel and Carter. Are you two coming? Why not? Carter said with a grin. Daniel nodded. As the four of them headed down the hallway, they began placing bets on how long Willow would last against Teal'c after having gained control over her telepathy. To be continued.